Hey everybody, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, happy middle of the night, whatever it is, the time that you're watching this. We are going to do a quick lesson on straight mix baking. Straight mix is our first method out of the four, and it is the easiest method by far. This is a recipe it's called Best Brownies. I will send the recipe to you. It is amazing and delicious, so you should make it. It's super easy. Straight mix is basically you have one combination of your wet ingredients, one combination of your dry ingredients. They get dumped together, mixed, and then you're done. Because I'm following our critical techniques, I've already preheated my oven and I prepared my pan. A note about this, we're making brownies. I greased the pan, the recipe said to grease and flour. So I greased the pan. Since I'm making a chocolate thing, this would be the same with chocolate cake, chocolate cupcakes, anything where it says flour. I used cocoa powder instead of white flour. The white flour, when you're making a chocolate cake or brownies or something chocolatey, it kind of makes like a gummy, it shows up. So if you use cocoa powder, it does the same thing, doesn't show up, adds a little bit to your cake. So what I did was greased it, put a little cocoa powder in the middle, and just kind of tapped it around like this till I got it all covered and tapped out my excess. So I will put this to the side. So what we have here is our mix of dry ingredients and wet ingredients. In this bowl, we have some all-purpose flour, some cocoa powder, some baking soda, and some salt. It doesn't say to sift it or anything, but I always like to kind of mix it up a little bit and combine it just to kind of give it a head start there. This is one of my favorite tools. I got this at Mary's Kitchen Port, I think. It's a whisk that doesn't really aerate, so it really helps break up lumps and mix things without whipping them. I know Mother's Day is over, but oh well. Okay. In this, I have my liquid ingredients, my liquefiers. I have egg, I have vanilla, I have sugar. Remember from our baking ingredients categories lesson that sugar is actually considered a liquid. If you put the sugar in here, it's not good. So make sure that your sugar always goes in with your liquid ingredients unless the recipe specifies otherwise. If it's a powdered sugar, usually it doesn't, but granulated sugar usually goes in with the liquid. So it also called for some melted butter. Yum. I'm gonna put that in. So basically a straight mix is mixing this together, getting it nice and combined. You can do this with a spoon or a spatula. Also, this is just one of my fave tools, as it were. And then sometimes recipes will tell you to make a well in the dry ingredients and pour the wet ingredients in. This particular recipe doesn't matter, so I'm just gonna put in my dry ingredients, mix those up. It took me, less than 5 minutes to get my mise en place together. Remember when we were talking about the critical techniques, how it's good to have everything laid out. Everything was pre-measured, so you can see, it's taking me no time at all to do this. So now that it's kind of coming together, I'm gonna use a more spatula-like tool to make sure I'm getting all of it off the side of the bowl. And it's creating like a deliciousness. This recipe I will show you in a little quick second step here. You frost this with a really easy frosting that you make, and it is insane out of this world. So that's about it. If you want to use a hand mixer, you can do that. It's just as easy to do it with a spoon for this particular recipes, and for most straight mixed recipes, it's just as easy to put a little elbow grease into it. Then I'm going to take my prepared pan. The only thing you don't want is any giant lumps. If you see any giant lumps of anything, flour or sugar, just break it up with your spoon and remix a little bit. I'm going to take my pan and I'm going to put all this yumminess into it. This is a really super easy, delicious thing to make, and it doesn't take a lot of ingredients either. I'm going to leave some in the bowl for licking the camera. Probably for my kids, not for me. Then I'm just going to spread this out so it's in an even layer. It will seem kind of thin, but it's okay. it's not a real cakey brownie. This is an 8x8 pan, I think. Spread this out. And once it's kind of even in there, give this, try to get all of this out of the pan. Then I'm gonna pop this guy in the oven. And we're good to go in about, let's see, 25 to 30 minutes. This will be good to go. So I'm gonna pop this in the oven, then I'll show you how to make the frosting. Okay, here we're gonna make the frosting for the brownies while they're in the oven. In this bowl, I have 3 tablespoons of butter. Remember from the Instagram post I posted today, you can measure the tablespoons of butter. They're marked on the side of the stick. Each stick of butter is 8 tablespoons. That's a good thing to have in your mind. 8 tablespoons, 1 cup, 1/4 pound is 1 stick. So keep that in your mind. But I measured out 3 tablespoons of softened butter. And this, since you're making a frosting, can be a little softer than normal. It doesn't have to bake, so it can be a little softer. That might make it easier to start mixing. It also has 3 tablespoons of cocoa powder. It has a tablespoon of honey, some vanilla extract, and a cup of confectioner sugar, which is powdered sugar. Either way, this recipe I like to also add just like a drizzle of cream. You can use milk also if you have that, any kind of milk. I find it just makes it a little bit fluffier and easier to come together. So I'm just gonna start on low. When I'm gonna use my hand mixer for this. Whenever you use a mixer, a hand mixer, a stand mixer like a KitchenAid mixer, you always start on the lowest setting, especially if you're starting out with a bowl of flour or powdered sugar or something really light like that. Otherwise, it just explodes in your face and goes everywhere, which this may still do. So I'm gonna put it on the lowest setting. It's kind of kicking around a little bit. I'm gonna drizzle a little bit more cream in there. And then you just kind of keep working this in a low setting. And you'll see it starts to come together kind of fudgy. And once you kind of get you can see it's going a little bit haywire. Once you get it kind of, so it's got most of the powdered sugar in, you can turn it up and whip it on a higher thing, but just start out slow. So now it's kind of in a fudgy ball. And I'm getting all my powdered sugar in there, so now I can turn it up a little bit. And it starts to get lighter in color and a little bit lighter in texture. So I'm gonna whip that a little bit, and then I'm gonna kind of scrape this down. You can see it has a much more like frosting-y texture now to it. I'm gonna add just a teeny tiny bit of cream, so maybe it's gonna end up being about 2 or 3 tablespoons of cream. I don't want it to be liquidy, but I want it to kind of get a more fluffy texture to it. So add about that much. You can see it's not very much out. Put this puppy on high. You could use this to frost a cake also. If you double or triple this recipe, I mean, this frosting is crazy. It's essentially a buttercream. Okay, pop these guys off. I'll just give it kind of a final mix to make sure I got everything off the bottom of my bowl. You guys, I wish you could smell this and taste it. It's fluffy and chocolatey and delicious. So when the brownies come out, they will stay in their pan to cool for about 10 minutes. Then I'll let them cool completely. And then you can spread the frosting on, and then you're good to go. So you'll see that in a sec. Okay, everybody, we have our brownies done, and they cooled on the counter until it's room temperature or cool to the touch. Because the frosting is a buttercream, a butter base, you don't want to put it on anything that's still too warm because it'll just melt like butter. So before I frost these, I'm just going to cut around the pan with a sharp knife to make sure, I'll just make it a little easier to get them out. Then I'm going to take my fudgy frosting, plop it in the middle, spread it out as evenly as I can so that each piece has some heavenliness of this frosting on it. Make sure I get all of it in there. It smells so good. Delicious. Okay, let's cut one of these bad boys out so you can see it. If you don't want to eat these right away, or you want to make a double batch and save some, you can remember from our cooking section, if you remember individually quick frozen, what you can do is take these out of the pan, put them on a sheet pan with some parchment or some foil on it or something. Make sure they're a little bit spread apart and you can freeze them that way. And then just take them out either one by one or however you want to defrost them. The first one getting out of the pan is the hardest one because you gotta kind of wiggle it out without mushing it too much. Here it is in all its glory. Fudgy and delicious with a delicious frosting. You're good to go.